You meet someone, things click, and the relationship moves towards something real. But the moment true closeness arrives, they suddenly freeze up and pull away. Society tends to reward this kind of emotional distance. We praise fierce independence and unyielding boundaries as ultimate signs of strength and self-reliance. But looking at this flowchart of attachment theory, a different reality emerges. These behaviors are the hallmarks of an avoidant attachment style, which branches off into two distinct subcategories, dismissive and fearful. When an avoidant person suddenly drops the temperature in a relationship, the person on the receiving end is left dealing with profound confusion and, quite understandably, a lot of anger. Yet that sudden chill usually has very little to do with a lack of love. What you're actually witnessing is the automatic activation of a highly structured psychological defense mechanism, one that we can break down piece by piece. To understand how this system operates, we have to look at its origin code, which is almost always written during childhood emotional neglect. When caregivers routinely ignore a child's needs or discourage them from outwardly expressing joy or sadness, the child is placed in an emotionally unsafe environment. To survive it, they have to adapt. The child's brain writes a new operational rule to protect itself. The only person I can truly depend on and trust is myself. This early conditioning doesn't fade with age. It establishes a rigid baseline of trust issues, carrying directly into relationships formed as adults. By mapping this out, we see exactly how the root of childhood emotional neglect anchors straight down into a complete loss of trust. This deprivation wires the brain to view deep connection as an active threat, cutting off future intimacy. The avoidant mind constructs a three-part psychological shield to deflect vulnerability. First, emotional suppression, bottling up feelings and viewing expression as weakness. Second, extreme boundaries, enforcing strict rules to keep everyone at a distance. Finally, hyper-independence, a pathological need to solve problems alone. Because they've had to fend for themselves for so long, they often harbor a secret disdain for anyone who openly relies on a partner or displays the emotional vulnerability they work so hard to hide. Emotional suppression, extreme boundaries, and hyper-independence operate as an integrated, automated armor system designed to guard against exposure. So what happens when this thick psychological armor bumps up against a real-world relationship? Predictable intimacy roadblocks appear immediately. The avoidant partner will stubbornly steer conversations away from emotional depth, preferring to keep the dynamic safely hovering on a surface level. They employ physical avoidance tactics, refusing to meet a partner's family, preventing the relationship from getting serious, or disappearing for extended me time to reset that comfortable emotional distance. But the mind's ultimate sabotage tool in this scenario is an empowered inner critic. This overactive voice constantly scans the environment, seeking out and magnifying every single flaw in both the avoidant individual and the person they're dating. The brain then weaponizes those perceived flaws. It uses them as a perfectly logical, rational justification to abandon the relationship, right as true vulnerability becomes a risk. This diagram shows exactly how the system traps itself. Armor activation leads to surface-level connection, which triggers hypercriticism, ultimately resulting in isolation. The system successfully achieves its goal of avoiding vulnerability, but the output is chronic relationship dysfunction and profound loneliness. Looking at this cycle, it's crucial to understand that having an avoidant attachment style does not mean an individual is inherently cold, heartless, or incapable of love. It is a tragically effective survival tool, engineered by a vulnerable child to navigate an unsafe world. It has simply outlived its usefulness in adulthood. Identifying these specific behavioral signs, whether seen in a partner or noticed in the mirror, is the critical first step to carefully retiring those defenses. Setting aside these survival habits doesn't require you to surrender your personal independence, nor does it mean you have to abandon healthy boundaries. By tracing these behaviors back to their structural origins, one can finally stop fighting a psychological war that ended in childhood and finally make room for genuine connection.